Let me put pressure on you from another direction that I do believe in, though, which may be different from yours, is why is it important to you to make sure that that purpose is divorced from the invocation of God? Right? I mean, you went out of your way in your description of it. It's almost as though you caveated it. It's almost I'm just playing around with you a little bit, but an inverse Catholic impulse of, you have a guilt if you did bring God into it, that you have to flog yourself and had to caveat it so many times to say, yes, there is this great purpose, but that's different from saying there's God. Don't accuse me of saying there's God, but there is this purpose. What is it about your observation or reflection that makes that exclusion so important to state, just even as a priority, as versus leaving the possibility of it open? Tell me about that, because that's interesting to me.
That's a very good question, because I do think we need to be alert to these biases and prejudices. I feel, as someone raised in sort of intellectual circles in the West, we're very well trained to be alert to religious biases,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not very well trained to be alert to secular biases.
Yes, totally.
And I find it hard, to be honest, standing up in front of my peers and defending panpsychism and cosmic purpose, because it feels silly in the intellectual circles I swim in. So we do need to be, but eventually I just decided, well, look, this is where I think the arguments and the evidence are pointing to, and I've got to be honest with myself. But likewise, yeah, you're right to question: is this just a prejudice against God or something? The UK is very, very secular. Um, well, I do think there are a couple of issues I have with God, although I'm, very open-minded on all of these topics. I mean, one is the classic problem of reconciling an all-loving, all-powerful God with the terrible pain and suffering we find in the world. In the human case, maybe believers in God point to free will, and maybe that can do some work. But what about the terrible suffering we find in the animal world? What about the short-tailed North American shrew, which paralyzes its prey and then slowly eats it alive over several days before it eventually dies from its wounds? Why would a loving, all-powerful God choose to bring that into existence? So I do have that worry. I mean, also,
Can I ask a question about that?
yeah, we could go with that.
Yeah. Um, why, if such God was all powerful and you recognized yourself as not that God, would you have the capacity to second guess that existence?
That's a very good question, and one I go into in some detail in my book, I think. And I'd invite people who go for the multiverse or go for God to dig into the book. I should say that the book is aimed at both a general audience
Mhm.
and an academic audience. So each chapter has a more accessible introduction, and then a digging deeper section where I try to get into all of these, cover almost every objection. That's what philosophers want to do. You want to cover every possible objection. So if you've got a good objection, probably it's there in the book.
Yep.
But actually, Vivek, I think probably the cutting edge of the philosophical discussion of this is a position called skeptical theism, which says we have no idea why God allows suffering. But, we shouldn't expect to. We're not
Hmm.
God. Like, we could give an analogy. Suppose you're a first year physics student, undergraduate, and you don't understand, some equation. You don't understand in a textbook. You don't understand some move in the reasoning. And you think, oh, well, I can't see the reason for that. So it must be wrong, right? That would be
Yeah,
crazy, right?
that's right. That's right.
You're not a physics expert. So
I'm pretty sure most of us
God
make that
is,
mistake all the time. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
do. I'm sure.
Human nature. Think we're God. But yeah, God is so much better, cognitively, if God exists, cognitively greater than me. How could I expect to understand God's reasons for creating the universe? The story of the book of Job in the Bible, I
Yep.
think, expresses
Totally.
that very well. What is my response to this? It's a very interesting argument, but I suppose ultimately I think all we can do is work with the evidence, in a broad sense of evidence,
Mhm.
and the arguments we currently have. Yeah, if God exists, then who am I? God is greater than me, and God must have some reason I don't understand for creating the short-tailed. I never remember if it's long-tailed or short-tailed. Anyway, North American shrew. But when in a position of uncertainty, and I'm always in my work about emphasizing uncertainty, the importance of embracing how uncertain life is, and I'm trying to work out whether God exists, then all I can do is work with my understanding of morality and try and make the best guess I can. I mean, take an analogy. Scientists now tell us, what is it, 80-90% of the universe is dark matter and energy that we don't understand at all. So does that mean we should stop doing physics? No, we try the best with the evidence we got. So I think I try with the moral understanding, not just me, but great moral thinkers have, to try and work out, would a God create a universe like this? And that leads me to have some doubts about the existence of God, and if, and at least explore other ways. I think, as I say, people think it's either God or it's atheism.
Mhm.
It's at least interesting and important to explore different ways of different worldviews, lay all the positions on the table. Let's see what comes out of it. Other ways of making sense of purpose and directionality in the universe and the meaning of existence.